Hi, I'm Dario. I'm the product specialist here at Ortofon in the United States. And today we're in our office here in New York, and I have special guest Leif Johannsen, who is the Chief Officer of Acoustics and Research for Ortofon. Welcome.
Thank you.
So you are, among other things, our cartridge designer. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been at Ortofon now for 15 and a half years. And of course, I've been designing all the cartridges since then. So there are many cartridges along the way.
I see. And so today, it's really exciting to have you here because we are actually celebrating the release of our new MC Verismo, which is an interesting cartridge for so many different reasons, but primarily because this is kind of like an evolution of our famous A90, A95 cartridge series.
Yeah, you could say that. The A90 was really my sort of the breakthrough, as I see it, as my breakthrough in sort of as cartridge designer. We put a lot of new things into it, SLM technology, and we got something really nice and good, astonishing sound out of it. So I guess you are also remembering that back many years ago.
Yeah, I remember that the A90 it was a revelation. It totally changed the landscape of what people thought about phono cartridges up until that time. And it was also very controversial, mainly because it was a cartridge that was so literal in its presentation. It kind of gave everything that was in the groove, and it was so insightful. But I think that in many ways that people also weren't used to having a cartridge that was so neutral and just so honest at the same time, but still really exciting to listen to.
Yeah, I've heard all those comments as well. So some people were really excited about it. This is a revolution, some people said, but on the other hand, some people said that I cannot stand listening to this. This is just too much, because they were used to listening to cartridge which sort of were coloring the sound or doing something to it. But this is not what I wanted back then. I wanted something that was really true to the groove. Get out what is in the groove.
Right, and that definitely kind of goes along with Ortofon's ethos in general, which is that generally our cartridges try to reproduce everything which is in the record and not to try to influence the sound in any way, shape, or form. Just get the purest signal off of the record.
Sure, that's what it's all about for me. Really, we do not want to listen to something that has been added to the sound. We want to listen what's in the groove, and this technology we introduced in the A90 with the SLM technology for the body really sort of pushed this a little bit forward. So it made it easier for us to get to there.
Well, yeah, and SLM technology was really interesting because it really offers a lot more damping as far as getting rid of unwanted vibrations. But really, the first time that I ever remember hearing an SLM type cartridge, that it really surprised me, because I just remember musical information sort of emanating from nothingness, which was a very interesting sensation at first, because you're not really used to hearing a vinyl record played with such control over resonances, that it really sounded very natural, but it was shocking, because up until that time I had never experienced something that was able to do that so well.
No, that's true, and it's obvious I was I was very happy about it, because this was something that I was been looking for. The former cartridge I made, the Windfeld, I tried to do something getting close to this point, but I really did not get there all the way. But the A90 got me a lot further.
Right, and I think that the thing that's really great about the Verismo now, which is released, is that over the years, that even after the A95 cartridge, which was our 95th anniversary model, that there was still a lot of demand by listeners for us to have a cartridge that had the same skeletal body, the same SLM type of design, and the Verismo is really kind of like a hyper-evolved version of those. It has a lot of new features and a lot of things that are really interesting, because not only do they tend to make the cartridge more insightful and more revealing, but they also have other implications on the performance of the cartridge, and really kind of makes it one of the best cartridges, I believe, that we've ever brought to the table, both for technology and sound performance. So first of all, tell me a little bit about the SLM technique and exactly how that is applied for this cartridge.
This is made by SLM technology. It's titanium. And the big difference in making it with SLM technology compared to if you would take a solid block of titanium and then machine away what do you not want, then we are building this up layer by layer by this selective laser melting technology or additive manufacturing. So you are adding layer by layer instead of removing stuff. And this gives us some opportunity to have internal structure, and that is definitely the key. Because internal structure means that you could put damping inside this otherwise solid piece of titanium. And of course you cannot do that by taking a solid block of titanium and then machining stuff away. So you're really building the damping into the system in the SLM process. But the cartridge does not really look like this when it comes out of the machine, the printing, SLM printing machine or building machine. This has been machined afterwards to have a nice finish and also to have the sort of precision that we need, because this is a key part in the cartridge. This is not just a dummy housing. This is what connects the cartridge on the top to the head shell, the tone arm, and then goes all the way down here to the stylus. So if this is not really doing its job for giving the stylus the best working conditions, then we can put whatever inside down here. It will never really perform as it could if this was going to be perfect. So it's really stiff and it has damping. So that is the first sort of the first thing we need to do in order to give this stylus best possible working conditions. And on the top, well, of course, 2 threaded holes, and then we have these sort of 3 very small areas which are going to connect to the head shell or the tone arm, so that we know exactly that we have contact in these 3 areas and nowhere else. So this is important also.
Well, I think that many people, when they think about cartridges, that it's not necessarily understood immediately just how important that the exterior body housing is, because in a lot of ways it is going to be responsible for doing a lot of damping with regard to vibrations. And really the material that gets used for the outer housing of a cartridge can have such a profound impact to the motor system inside of the cartridge.
Exactly.
And so what you're saying here is that you're just trying to more or less provide the optimal working conditions for both the stylus and for the motor system, which exist here on this block of more or less a self-damping structure.
Exactly. So this is what's all about. We do not want to add anything. So we do not want to add any coloration. We would like to sort of control vibrations and control resonances, and we want to give perfect working conditions. So this is first step, definitely. If we go further in this cartridge, we of course have the magnetic system here. This magnetic system is basically the same as you have in the MC A95 and Winfeld TI and also in the A90. There are some differences and we'll come back to that, but basically it is the same thing that we're using, a really nice compact magnetic system. And the first thing that is really coming to my mind if we are going to talk about this is the suspension, because how do we get sort of mechanically, physically from the body and then out to the stylus that we've been talking about? This is of course through the suspension, because this is where the moving system is connected to the body.
Now, as far as suspension goes, I sort of always note that when I talk to people about cartridge suspensions, that it's not a very glamorous part of the cartridge. But the thing that I believe that people should probably think about and understand is just how much the suspension is responsible for as far as dictating the overall sound of the cartridge as a whole. Now, when we talk about our higher end cartridges, things from Exclusive Series and including Verismo, that we're using this technology, which is very old Ortofon technology called the wide range damping system. And wide range damping is really found in so many of our different models. And what I have found personally is that cartridges with the wide range damping system really do a fantastic job of honing in on the starts and stops of notes, really being able to sense the delineation between instruments. I think that it really is exceptional to be able to hear and hone in on this overall sound. But maybe you could explain just a little bit of exactly what wide range damping is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was funny for me to hear that. Yes, this is another non-sexy part of the cartridge. So for many people, the housing is a non-sexy part. It's we just need it.
Right.
And the same thing with the suspension. It's non-sexy. It's just some kind of rubber.
Just some sort of rubber, right?
Right. But I totally agree with you. It's not just some kind of rubber. It's really, really essential to have the performance of the cartridge and have the sound. And I also agree on what you're telling me about the sound. So wide range damping. We need damping at sort of high frequencies because there will be a resonance present between the stylus and the sort of compliance of the vinyl. Mm-hmm. So you will have a resonance between these two. And if you would not have damping, you would have a really nice high resonance peak somewhere between 10 and 20K. Mm-hmm. It varies depending on a lot of things,
right.
But we do not want that. So at high frequencies, we really want to have damping to control that peak. We want it to be flat, of course. But the thing with rubber suspensions is that if you want to have a lot of damping, you need the rubber suspension to be hard, or harder than you might want to. Because a hard rubber suspension would also give you less compliance. And it's going to be really stiff, and then you would have problems with the tracking ability. And if you look back many years back at the beginning of MC cartridges, it was always really a compromise between having some kind of peak and some decent kind of tracking ability and compliance. That was really a big thing at the beginning. Then rubber was sort of developed to be better and better, but still in a cartridge with just one rubber suspension, it's a compromise. In this one, we have a compound suspension. It's in fact two suspensions divided by a metal plate. That metal plate has sort of to be heavy. Of course, it cannot really be heavy in the sense that it's heavy to lift, but it's made out of a metal with a high density in order to really this has to be sort of mean something to these small parts. And this is platinum that we're using. Platinum have a really high density. So you have two rubber suspension divided by this platinum plate. And what it does is that at low frequencies, the platinum plate does really not matter to the motion. It just moves along with the two rubber suspensions. So you have one big rubber suspension. Mm-hmm. And that big rubber suspension, the two ones combined, has a nice high compliance. So we have a nice tracking ability. But if you go to high frequencies, then only one of the rubber suspensions would be active because this heavy platinum plate would sort of decouple the other rubber suspension. So now you're down to one rubber suspension, and therefore it's more stiff, harder, you have more damping. So you get the best of the two worlds. You have something which is hard at high frequencies and soft at low frequencies, wide range damping, low, high, wide range damping. So this is still, of course, a compromise. Everything is a compromise in its design, but this is so much better than just having one suspension.
See, that's fascinating because most of the time when we think about classic MC cartridges, that by and large, almost all of them were single suspension designs up until the development of the wide range damping technology, which then sort of made its way into a lot of our top end models.
Yes.
But this is really useful because, as you said, having two suspensions is actually able to better damp the entire frequency range than kind of putting all of your eggs in one basket and saying that you only are able to do one particular area. But furthermore, we're using a new rubber technology inside of the Verismo that actually was also found in our 2M Black LVB, which is multi-wall carbon nanotubes, which is a mouthful. But what you told me about multi-wall carbon nanotubes is that not only does it have benefit to the overall sound, as far as things like suspension design. But then in addition to that, that it also offered interesting benefits in trackability and tracking performance. So maybe you could explain a little bit about that.
Yes, first of all, I would really like to mention sort of the people at Ortofon factory who is responsible for this, because we have a specialist, an engineer really digging into this, and he's been digging into this new technology for a long time to figure out, can this be of some kind of benefit for us? So our compounds that we are using have been developed over many years. And they are really good compounds. We have really nice and good performing cartridges. But this new way, this new ingredients that is sort of replacing what is called carbon black, which is just carbon powder. So this is taking out. Now we're putting in these multi-wall carbon nanotubes, and this gives us a opportunity to adjust the different properties of the rubber suspension in a different way than we are used to. So we are also learning now. So we've been working on this for a long time, and we see some really benefits that the combination of the different ingredients that we put into the rubber suspension can give us sort of a better, even better compromise between damping and trackability than we are sort of used to have. It's not a revolution saying that the suspensions that we have been using over the many years now are really not good. This is just adding something. We are getting a step further. It's an evolution, an iteration.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that this kind of goes back to what you told me about that even though Ortofon might not be releasing a cartridge every single month, that the development process, that it never really stops. No. That as far as making experiments with new production techniques and new materials, that they go on a continuous basis. And also kind of, what you had told me is that some of the inspiration for the Verismo was something that's kind of been more or less cooking for years now.
For years, yeah, we always have something going on. It's sort of, there are always prototypes being made with new stuff, always. So I'm waiting for prototypes for some new stuff now as well, and I'm always waiting for some stuff. And then we have really good suppliers, and we have really good in-house technology now, the rubber suspensions and stuff like this. So there's always something going on. We are not just saying, okay, now we have a good cartridge and this is it, we are going to use this technology forever. No, we want to push borders all the time. We want, how can we get a step further, because there's always a step further.
Yeah. And when I talk to people who ask me questions about our cartridges, and in particular, they wonder why we don't have a new cartridge out every month. That that I have to tell them that, hey, we're continuously experimenting with new techniques and materials and new prototypes and everything, but we take our time to make sure that what we do release is absolutely right and really is is an evolution and is better than what we were able to do in the past.
Definitely. So this is what Ortofon is all about. Ortofon is really about sort of also looking back to all the good stuff we have made over the years, and we still want to use that. Wide range damping, an example. Of course, it's really so good, so why shouldn't we keep on using that? We're just making it slightly better by using new rubber compound. So
right.
That's it.
Well, I think that kind of the the cornerstone of what makes this cartridge so interesting to so many people, aside from being another SLM skeletal body cartridge inspired by the anniversary cartridges, is the use of a fully diamond cantilever.
Yeah, this cantilever is really the cornerstone. This cantilever is attached to an armature, of course. This armature is then, of course, connected to the rubber suspensions. The armature that we are using in this one is an armature we introduced in the MCA 95, this semi-non-magnetic armature. This phrasing and this word is basically something that Ortofon has come up with, because nobody out there is really looking for something semi-non-magnetic. If we're talking to people about magnetic material, iron or iron alloys, iron nickel alloys, they want to have it really magnetic a lot. And we do have that also in our sort of normal armatures that goes into, for instance, the cadenzas and the quintets. This is pure iron, which is really highly magnetic. If you get that close to a magnet, it just says slam, and then it's stuck to that. But we made this MC Anna many years ago, and in that one we introduced this totally non-magnetic armature. And that was inspired back from especially for me, the MC 5000.
Right.
And why going to a non-magnetic armature if you have a lot of benefits from a magnetic armature? Because a magnetic armature will really work as an amplification for the output voltage, because you put more magnetic material into the air gap, so the flux density is in fact higher, and then you would have more output voltage. And this is what you want. So even if those cartridges did not have that much output voltage, it was the way that those worked, MC 2000, 3000, 5000. I was really inspired by that. So in order not to have this very low output voltage, we made a special magnetic system for the MC Anna. And that was nice. But this magnetic system we have in here is not as strong as the MC Anna magnetic system. So if I wanted to go all the way and put a non-magnetic armature into this one, the output voltage would be very low. You could maybe use it, but you would really have a special preamp or really MC step-up transformer with a high amplification factor. But so that wouldn't be a no-go. So I needed to find a compromise. Again, design is very often about compromise. So I did not want to stick to the magnetic ones because they are really being affected by the static magnetic field. I wanted to go for the non-magnetic. I could not, so I had to find something in between, semi-non-magnetic in a way.
Right.
And the search for that material was interesting because you cannot, none of the suppliers of this kind of material is sort of stating this. So you had to sort of look into the alloys, what would I expect from these materials, and then we would buy different alloys from different suppliers, and we would make armatures out of this and make cartridges and try to figure out how is this really working. So that was the develop process for the MC A95, and this is the same armature we also have in the Winfeld TI, and now we have put the same armature into this one. So it's a perfect compromise, if you can talk about perfect compromise, but it's a good compromise between sort of magnetic and non-magnetic.
Okay, well, so when we talk about magnetic armatures and how that they exist in most of our MC cartridges below, say, cadenza bronze, when you move into something like a cadenza bronze cartridge and move above that a lot of them have what's called a field stabilizing element.
Yeah.
And that's really meant to sort of address some of the shortcomings of using a magnetic armature with regard to what happens with the magnetic field.
Yeah.
Now, is the field stabilizing element going to be in use here in the Verismo cartridge?
It still is, yeah. You could say that you could maybe live without it because you have reduced the problem. But the problem with the problem that the field stabilizing element is sort of correcting is not really this way that how the armature is affected by the static magnetic field. This is more like when a magnetic armature is moving in a magnetic field, then it will make some changes. And physics for this kind of magnetic system sort of dictates that the system does not want changes. The system wants to be where it is because this is sort of a stable position. So physics dictates that if I make a change, then the system wants to go back. So if I make a change to the magnetic field due to the motion of a magnetic armature, then we really want to sort of change that back, and the way we can do that is by adding this field stabilizing element. That is a cylinder made out of copper, and then you have it silver coated to have really low resistance, and that sits around the armature. So you have a cylinder sitting around the armature. So now when the armature is moving and making this change, you in fact have a current induced in the FSE. And that current is producing a magnetic field that is trying to counteract the change that was made by the armature. So this is how physics is working. So now this cylinder and the current that is induced will counteract the change. And the bigger the change in magnetic field, the more important the field stabilizing element is. So yes, if the armature was totally magnetic or magnetic like in most of our MCs, you would need it more than in this one. But this is still slightly magnetic, so it will still add a little bit of benefit. So we use it because we want to have the best possible sound.
Right. So this is something that even though that it might not be the most active versus other cartridges, that it's something that we didn't necessarily want to leave unturned. And and a lot of times when it comes to cartridges, that it's really about those small changes and those small things that we do that kind of all add up into one big picture.
Yep.
For instance, coil wire, and in this cartridge we're using an Ocurum coil wire. What exactly is Ocurum?
It's a coil wire that was introduced by Ortofon again many years ago. It's a gold-plated copper wire, so we have a 6N copper wire, and that has been gold-plated. This is a very nice wire to use in a cartridge like this, which could tend to be maybe a little bit too analytic. But you said at the beginning you were expecting something really sort of literal sound of this, and this is what you're getting. We can come back to that. So a wire that is sort of giving a slight tweak to this, but it's really a slight tweak. So coil wire is not determining the sound of the cartridge, never. But it's adding, as you say. There are many small things that add up to the total sound, and this Ocurum will add up to the sound in this way. And it's the pure copper and with gold is really a perfect way of sort of having the current that is induced transformed into this voltage that you want to have on your amplifier.
Right. So, so getting back to the sound of the cartridge, I think that the thing that's really on everybody's mind here is how is this really going to be different from the cartridges that were before it, say like the A90 or the A95. We know that there's a diamond cantilever, and we know that there's some extra things that go into this cartridge. But how would you personally make this description? Because I think that a lot of people who have owned these cartridges in the past, that they're very interested in Verismo and they want to know what it brings to the table and how it's going to benefit them.
Yeah, definitely. If we forget about the diamond cantilever as a model here, that could be Boron. Now we are imagining this is diamond. So if we are looking at what's inside the cartridge apart from this, then you would get a sound that is sort of getting close to the sound of the MC A95, or maybe even the Winfeld TI. But this is the sound you would get. Not totally, because it's been tweaked or adjusted by the new rubber suspensions, and so it's not the same. But if you want to have sort of an idea about the sound, this is what you would get. But as you mentioned, diamond cantilever, this will make a big difference. It really does. I remember many years ago, 6 years ago, it must be at least maybe 7 years, 6-7 years ago, that was when we first started to work with diamond cantilevers. Back then, we had the MCA95 in our program, and we had the MC Anna, sorry, in our program. We wanted to figure out what could we achieve, what sound could we achieve by replacing the Boron cantilever, which is a really good cantilever, by a diamond cantilever. So we started making prototypes back then, whatever, 6 years ago, based on the MC-A95, based on the MC Anna, where we then put diamond cantilever into. And I remember it, I was sort of, well, one step back. The first time I heard the MC-A90 at my place, in my setup, I was really sort of, what is this? What is going on? I was really, you know, queuing down the record and queuing down the cartridge and going back to the listening position, but you almost did not get back there because what was this? There was something exciting, and then queuing it down and again and quickly back, and that was really exciting. I remember that. That was almost the same I experienced when I sort of started to test those prototypes with diamond cantilevers. Sort of, wow, can this make this big difference going from Boron to diamond? It was so huge a difference. So I used a couple of years, and I mean years, really to listen to MC-A95 with diamond cantilever, listen to the MC Anna with diamond cantilever. So you could say that almost the first prototypes for the Verismo, I already listened to that 5 or 6 years ago, because I listened to an MC-A95 with diamond cantilever. I was really fond of it back then. And also, that was also when I listened to the first prototype of the MC Anna Diamond, because this is basically what I had back then. But so we wanted to make sure that this is really as good as we thought by first listening. So we used a couple of years, and then decided to go to the market with diamond cantilever in the MC Century. I guess you remember that. 100 years.
It was a very, very famous cartridge for us, and you know, only a few of them were released worldwide, only 100 pieces.
Yeah, and that was really the response we had from reviewers and from listeners who bought this was quite amazing. So they definitely agreed with me and the Ortofon that this is a really good sound. This is one step further than we were before. So this was taking the MC Anna one step up, or taking the MC-A95 one step up, whatever you would like to think about this. So this is also why we introduced the MC Anna Diamond, because as you said, MC Century 100 pieces quickly sold out, but the sound from the diamond cantilever was so good that we wanted to have it in the MC Anna. So MC Anna Diamond was born.
Well, I think that this is interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, you know, hearing you recant the story about your first experiment with something like A90 and how it also was done with when you first used diamond cantilever, that I find it really amusing, because I think that a lot of people maybe don't understand that not only are you an engineer responsible for cartridge designs, but you're also a really serious listener, and you also, the things that give you great pleasure are very much the same as what gives listeners of Ortofon cartridges, when they have them in their homes, the very same sort of enjoyment. And I just have to point that out, because you could talk about engineering stuff all day long, and we find it endlessly fascinating. But at the end of the day, you are a very serious listener, and this is what is driving innovation at Ortofon when it comes to cartridges, is just that desire to present things which are improving analog playback for everybody.
You're totally right. So I would normally phrase it in my way of phrasing that I'm trying to get this step further. I'm trying to get the sound that I want, and then at the same time I'm hoping that this sound that I want, this sound that I think is really good, is also what the listeners like. And so far it seems like we have been sort of doing a good job.
It does seem that way. So one other question about diamond cantilevers. What is it that makes the diamond cantilever so good? Does it have to do with the hardness of the cantilever? I mean, diamond being the hardest material in the world. Is this what's responsible, or is there really something else behind it?
No, it's definitely this hardness of the material that you are getting one step beyond the Boron cantilever. You're really having something which is very hard. So the transmission from the stylus moving in the groove up to the armature, which is sitting here, that transmission, this movement is just one step further. It's better than how you could do with a Boron cantilever. This is harder, and therefore it's better. So no doubt, the hardness of the diamond makes a difference.
So is there anything else that we have neglected to mention about this cartridge?
Well, this baby, of course.
Okay, yes, the Replicant 100 diamond.
Yeah, this is, it's not my baby in the way, but it was developed before I came to Ortofon, but I really fall in love with it. First time I heard it, that was also the MC 5000, so MC 5000 is important for me in this way. But this Replicant 100 does almost a perfect job in the groove. So what do you want a stylus to do in the groove? You want to get the sort of the signal out, you want to get the movements out that the cutting stylus made prior to that. And the cutting stylus is of course really sharp because it has to cut. So it can make really fine details. And so you need to find a way how to get those details out. So the sort of, let's call it the wrinkles in the grooves can be really small and narrow. So we want to get into all these wrinkles the best possible way. And to do that, you need to have a stylus that is really sharp. And of course, if we made it sort of perfectly sharp, that would not be good because you would cut the record. Right. And we don't want that. So you need to find a compromise where you would have it as sharp as you can get without damaging the record. And right now, the best thing we can do is to use a Replicant 100. This is rich, and remember, we're only touching the groove like this. This is the groove between my two fingers.
Right.
So you're having it like this, and nothing else is touching the groove. So, and down here is really sharp. We are talking about this radius that is down to 4 to 5 microns, and that is sharper than a razor blade. So it's really sharp down there. And of course, you could be afraid to put that into the groove, but if you look at from the other side here, where you have sort of the contact to the groove, there you have a big radius. So in total, if you have a sort of a long contact surface in this way, but short this way, narrow, then in total you get sort of a decent contact surface to the groove. And it's the area of this contact surface that will determine if you're going to sort of ruin the groove, recut it or not.
Right. So what you're saying here is that by having such an exceedingly large contact area on the whole, that this is actually going to have the benefit of reducing vinyl wear overall.
Sure. This is really going down into the groove where the cutting stylus were and not riding on top of them or anything else. So nobody has to be afraid that the Replicant 100 is really damaging their records. Unless they're using it in a bad way and or maybe not cleaning the record or bad adjustment or whatever. Then of course we're talking about something different. This kind of stylus need perfect alignment. So if you want to have the best possible sound, then definitely perfect alignment is necessary. And but if you do it, then it really sings. Then you get the music out of the groove.
Right, and when we're talking about alignment, we also can't say enough really that even things like azimuth are super critical on something like Replicant 100. Sure. But in your assessment, for anybody who's been working with cartridges, who's mounted their own cartridges, and who's spent time with an alignment tool, who's spent time maybe with with a microscope or a few other things, that this isn't an impossibility to get perfect alignment, not in the slightest. That this is actually something that, given the time that is necessary to put into it, that I think that anybody with a serious turntable and with a bit of a steady hand and possibly a USB microscope can get this exactly right.
Sure. Take your time, have the right tools, then of course you can do it.
And also, you have a video also on YouTube about specifically about cartridge setup, where you really go through each and every aspect of it.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a huge benefit to people that might be setting up one of our cartridges, to be able to actually see it from, well, you know,
that's from my point of view. That's from my point of view, but you can talk to other people out there. They might have sort of a slightly different take on it, and because there are many people who are really, really good at setting up cartridges, but this is my take on it. This is how I do it, and this is how it's been working well for me for many, many years.
Well, that's good, because I think that in many different instances that we speak to listeners who are sometimes intimidated by getting a cartridge with a complex stylus shape, because they understand that there are certain things that become critical about setup. And what I always try to tell people is that if they just spend the time with it, that it's not an impossibility, and that it's not a matter of that they shouldn't be worried about it. I think people sometimes tend to worry about cartridges, and I think that it's not really a matter of worrying so much as it is giving yourself the appropriate time, and, you know, using your hearing to really understand if the cartridge is performing the way that it's supposed to be.
Yeah, listening to the result after your setup is very important, because your ears are really revealing. You can use a lot of sort of measurement tools and USB microscope, and you might need to, but then you need to listen.
Right.
And if you're not really satisfied, then maybe try to tweak it a little bit, because the small tweaks can make a big difference if you're talking about something like this. A really small difference we are talking about. So tweaking, yes, definitely. Take your time. And enjoy setting up, because it's sort of it's a good experience. You learn about your cartridge, you learn about the stylus, so you know a lot more about it, and you can sort of relate to it, and also understand if something is suddenly sound is changing, then you know how to sort of check up what has changed now or whatever.
Right, you gain a lot of perspective from spending that time doing critical listening, and, you know, and somebody that is willing to put that amount of time in will ultimately have a great result.
Sure.
Thank you so much for coming by today. It's actually been great to talk to you about this, because you know, I always enjoy getting to spend time with you, because you offer so much deeper insight into what really is behind our products. It kind of gives you a little bit of a story, and you just come away from it feeling like you know just so much more about everything involving you know, our latest models.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you. I've also enjoyed this. I think you're a good person to talk to about this, because you have a lot of insight. You have the insight also about the sound and technology. So in this way, you can easily relate to some of the things I'm telling you, and also relate to how this will change the sound. So I've enjoyed it as well. So thank you for having me here.
Oh yeah. Well, come back again soon.
I will.